Hey guys, this is Toddy One Skip. Thank you for joining me today. This has taken a couple days because this is about the loss of Rob Reiner and not only what's going on in his unaliving, but more of a tribute and the talk about the unaliving and his son and such. Uh, so this is kind of like a hybrid. You'll see that I start off on my own and then I end with Phil and I having the argument. So this is episode 21 of the argument, hybrid style. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Thank you. I spent, 40 years of my life writing. And, I just wanted to tell stories. I wanted to take people out of reality and put them in a place that entertained them and took them away from their problems for a couple hours. We don't know why we're drawn to certain things and why we want to be, honestly, and strive to be a, in a certain career or to do things with our time that might just benefit us, and maybe there is no monetary gain. But writing to me was more than that because I lived and breathed it. I made huge concessions for it. And it's clear I wasn't as popular as I would have liked to have been. I think today would be something different if I still had that love and desire for it, because back then there were gatekeepers, you know. And when I first started writing, I didn't even know how to type. I sent my first script to Fawcett and Majors production. Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett, they were married at one point, and they had a production company. And I remember I sent my script to them, and it was on yellow legal paper. I think it was even written in pencil, if I'm honest with you. I was 13 at the time. I remember because the script that I sent them was not the first script that I've ever written, but it was the first script that I sent out, and it was called Something More Than Money. And it had to do with almost like Schitt's Creek, to be honest with you, getting money and losing money, which is something that my family was going through at the time because I wrote that script when I couldn't go to school, when I was in the witness protection program and I was waiting for all my records to change because I was going into high school. And so I couldn't go to school for a while. And I was writing at that point. I started writing when I was 12, so I was probably 1 or 2 years into it. And anyway, it's funny because Dick Van Dyke came out with a movie that was very much like the thing that I wrote a couple years later, where he was a dad of a family that had a lot of money and they lost the money and how they cope. And I wrote mine before then. Not that anybody stole anybody's thing or anything, because Schitt's Creek could have said that, or Dick Van Dyke's the movie he did could have said, that's Schitt's Creek. But that premise, there's really only so many premises. It's what you add to it that makes the script layered and interesting. I mean, the premise will keep them going, but if you don't keep the story going, nobody will give a shit about if the premise gets completed or not, because you have to engage. Right? So waking up in the morning and facing a blank piece of paper and not having it respond to you until you write something down, and showing up every day for that is a job in itself. Because when you have shit in your life that is, influencing your emotions, and showing up and staying dedicated to a character or a story is huge. It's exhausting. So Back then when I was, writing stuff out, obviously, I would send things out just as, crude as I did. I didn't have a typewriter, and I didn't know how to type, so, yeah, I sent my stuff out like that. Anyway, I did get a letter back from, Majors and, Fawcett, Productions, and it did say that they didn't accept unsolicited manuscripts. That was something I don't even know what that meant at the time, I don't think, and I would never know until, trying so many times just not to get scripts forwarded to the people that I needed them to get to because of the gatekeepers, and I'd keep writing, and keep writing, and keep writing because of people like Rob Reiner, Neil Simon, Carl Reiner, Baz Luhrmann, who would come later, as somebody that I would admire as a director. People that inspired me to tell stories in a way that I could relate to and I could look forward to, you know? When I first started, Rob Reiner wasn't the guy that I thought of. I mean, he was, I knew him as, Mike Stivic on All in the Family. But here's the thing, All in the Family inspired me. All in the Family inspired my sitcom writing. All in the Family inspired me as a person. Mike Stivic, Archie Bunker, that whole relationship, the script. Norman Lear wrote the show. I want to say that Carl Reiner, his dad, did something with that show. But the show that I remember his dad doing, which was I was a huge fan of, was the Dick Van Dyke Show. Right, that was my favorite, and is still one of my favorite sitcoms. But All in the Family was the greatest, I thought, because they had a perfect balance of making sure that the audience walked away with a message as well as being entertained. They might not have even known they got a message until after the show because they were entertained. So, as Rob Reiner's career started taking off and he started directing things, and I think that I was aware of the first thing that he directed was Stand By Me. And when that came out, there wasn't something that you could just look at and see, oh, who directed that and stuff like that, unless you looked in the newspaper or knew to look on a movie poster, you know? So I remember when his name came up on the screen, I was taken aback. And then I started following him as a director, and I never saw a movie of his that disappointed me. I never once saw anything of his creation that he wrote and said or produced or directed or acted in that made me say, "Shit, can I have my money back because that was a waste of time." And as a writer, that's all I ever wanted. I just wanted to make sure that I wrote a story that wasn't a waste of time for people, that it did exactly what I wanted it to do, take them out of their shit. And whether I put them in somebody else's shit that I created, it was out of their shit, or whether I entertained and made them laugh. It doesn't matter because that's what a writer does. It entrances people to listen to a story that you've created. So back in the day, people like Neil Simon, people like Rob Reiner, Carl Reiner, Norman Lear, um, were real like heroes to me because it's what I wanted to be. And I looked to them because I thought, and I do still think that they were just marvelous, fantastic entertainers as far as the way that they put a production together from beginning to end. So I was fortunate enough to get some correspondence back. Neil Simon is no longer with us. I had a pen pal type relationship with him. And he sent me tickets when I lived in DC to go see his play Rumors. And he just encouraged me to write. He just encouraged me to write. Um, I would get things back from these directors and writers, and they would say the same thing. I'm not allowed to accept unsolicited manuscripts. I'm not allowed to. And, you know, that kind of sucked. But they always kept me, keep writing, especially Neil Simon, because I mean, we wrote to each other for quite some time. And I'm not saying we wrote to each other often, but might be a couple years before I wrote and tried to send him something again. So he definitely knew who I was. But when I woke up and I heard that Rob Reiner and his wife died in such a way that was brutal, I was hysterical, because not only was he a hero to me as far as and I don't even want to say a hero, you know what I'm saying? But now, you know, he was an activist. He was somebody that stood up for marriage equality. He was somebody that stood up for the little people, and he was somebody with power that stood up for people that were different than him. He wasn't a gay man. I don't know if he has any gay kids, but he stood up for my rights. To me, he stood up for what was fair. And because he had power, he was able to be listened to make a difference, right? And to be murdered in such a brutal way. Just, he wasn't a hero because he was an actor. I mean, his dad was Carl Reiner, but he was brilliant because he was who he was. And he worked a lot. So he wasn't a lazy guy. And then besides that, he was an activist. And he didn't know anybody that. He could have lived quite the life he wanted to live behind his mansion without trying to help other people. That's where he's a hero. That's where I think he's a hero. He stood up for people that couldn't stand up for themselves, gave voices to a lot of us. A lot of those actors do that. Susan Sarandon, Goldie Hawn. They are heroes because we see, just small little content creators see how hard it is when we are on the side of something, because there's always somebody on the other side that wants to take you down. You know, I just see this picture in my head, and I'm gonna end this video on it. I'm gonna follow the case as far as Rob Reiner and what happened. I am gonna do that. But I just have this picture in my head, and I hope it comes out in the way that it's meant, for respect, to honor the type of personality that I think Rob Reiner had. So right now, it kind of looks like there's a family member, right, that might have been involved in this. So with his personality, with I bet you his disbelief, I can imagine his last words were something like, "What are you gonna stab me now?" Yeah. All right, guys. For those that have had his career touch your life or had his activism touch your life, I hope that you'll put something online that talks about his legacy. Guys, this is Toddy. Be better today than you were yesterday. Not half as good as you'll be tomorrow. Take care.
Oh, same here. Now the first reaction was like this weird kind of anger. That was the first reaction, was anger and darkness. And then I remembered something. I was like, holy shit, this guy, going back to the early days, All in the Family, he was the guy you identified with against Archie.
Well, he
Him,
was the one that
Gloria,
stood up to Archie.
and he stood up to Archie. He stood up to that bigotry. And
But
yeah,
that's who
Mike
he was in
Stivic,
real life as
something
well.
like
That's
that. Was his character's name?
Mike Stivic.
Yeah, no, I remember identifying with him as a kid, and a young
And
mind
but that's
watching
who he was.
beauty and Bob.
But that's who he was in real life as well. He was a political activist as well. He was a voice and a powerful voice um for a lot of people that shared a lot of his beliefs, and I was one of those people, but that's not that's not why we know that he was we don't know, but we're led to believe that the unaliving, the brutal slaying of him and his mother was from one of their children.
It is that is alleged, and there was charges apparently reported today in the state of California. The suspect that they have in custody is alleged to have done this. This may very well come with a confession. There's going to
There's
be
a possibility that he will probably plea for reasons of insanity because he is known to have mental, mental health issues. And, I don't mean to judge or anything, but he looked so detached in so many pictures of him, in an interview that he did with his dad about the movie that they did together, Being Charlie. When you see that interview, he actually loses his train of thought, which okay, that happens, but he has a look in his eyes that he is just spacey, and he appears to be under the influence. And Rob Reiner, he definitely he I know he influenced our creative energies, you know certainly mine, because All in the Family has definitely or had definitely had a big influence on my writing, and how far you could push somebody, and how you could be dark but yet be funny, because Archie Bunker's views were very dark, but they were demonstrated and acted out in a way that was ignorant, obviously, and that's what made it acceptable. You know what I'm saying? For it even to be said, and then to have the responses of the other characters get in his face. And the joke was always on Archie anyway at the end of it. He was
well,
always the
that's
one.
Norman Lear's genius, right? A lot of times that at work there,
Oh, forget it. Norman Lear, forget it. I mean, absolutely. But um
and but Rob Reiner's storytelling evolved from that, and
I
he
know.
was able to deliver stuff that lived with us. I mean, there are times where I'm walking around and I'm saying lines that I know are directly from his storytelling. And,
One of our favorite movies growing up, remember?
and to
Well,
think it started with This Is Spinal Tap, that was his first. And did you see the Spinal Tap 2 now? This is the last one.
no, I haven't seen it yet. But Rob Reiner, actually, I heard that he wrote for the Dick Van Dyke Show, and I thought that was early. Of course, his dad did the Dick Van Dyke Show, And they saw him as a serious writer at a young age, at 23 something. They saw him as a serious writer. He was in something before All in the Family. He had more screen cred because Sally Struthers said that, you know, he was more experienced in film. And of course, anyway, because being around with his dad, but what, you know, he was just every movie that I've ever seen of his was worth watching again because I got something out of it. It was layered, it was substantial, it made a difference. Most of the movies that Stand By Me, I mean, I took that movie with me for a good long time. Misery, and that's
Ghost
another
of
thing. His
Mississippi,
movies.
the scene of capturing Medgar Evers' assassination and then having his body exhumed, and the way he took the time to show us and describe that when they exhumed the body, it was almost as if
What are you talking about?
the movie Ghost of Mississippi.
Oh, I haven't seen. I did see that a long time.
It's
I
about the
saw that a while
assassination of
ago.
Medgar Evers, Whoopi Goldberg.
And that was one of his movies?
Yes, and
See
Alec Baldwin.
you see the,
He also
he
did.
didn't just do comedies. He didn't
No,
just
he did
do
serious. A Few Good Men. I mean,
romance.
Jack
Oh, Few
Nicholson
Good Men, I
can
know
handle
he
the
did
truth.
that.
That lives in people's minds.
Right,
That
mhm.
storytelling, what he
Right, right,
delivered
right,
to our culture, lives in people's minds.
right.
You can't handle the
I
truth.
don't think he wrote, he was a writer, but he didn't write those scripts that, we're talking about. Actually, the first movie he ever put out was Stand
But as
By
a
Me
director,
because,
it's your storytelling.
well, some of this stuff, but well, as a writer, no. The way it's seen, I give you that, but the words are the words. You know what I'm saying? And
Right,
it depends
I'm
on
saying that the director's vision is what is telling the story. So that's
it depends on the
I give him
I
the
would
credit of being the storyteller as the director of the film.
okay, well, I don't because I understand the vision and I understand what the director does, but I haven't seen the script, so I don't know how much was taken from the script or if it was all from the script. Because I know when I wrote my scripts, you didn't have to guess what anybody was doing or saying. The actors certainly brought in their part, you know, and
I know,
but the
but you're
words were
signing
the
your name
words.
as director. That's your vision. It's your telling the story. Unless it's an Alan Smithy and nobody's taking credit for it, it typically that where the eye, the vision, the
It makes
overall
everything work. I'm not going to take away that
comes to.
directing makes everything work, but I'm not going to say that the director is the storyteller when a writer spent time writing a story. I'm just not going to do it. So we're going to have to disagree on that one. Agree to disagree. Rob Reiner was a brilliant director and he was a brilliant writer. So he doesn't need to, in my opinion, take credit for other people's writings. He, in my thing in directing, is that putting it all together so that it's presentable on screen. Storyteller, somebody could have taken that screenplay or that book, and there's the story there. So that's where we just have the vision in seeing it for what it is in the presentation and doing it for what it is definitely a beautiful and a craft. Because to be honest with you, that script, if you read the book Stand By Me, right? Because we'll talk about Stand By Me. He read and he read that book and he acquired the rights to that book. So and that was a short story actually. So he turned that into a longer story, but there was a script writer there. He put in stuff to that. I give that because it was a short story, right? And then that they turned into a screenplay. But he worked on the turning into a screenplay. I would say he helped with that storytelling because that was a very short story and a script was written from it. But if somebody presented a script to him and worked on that script and he took from that script, that's where and I don't want to take away anything from the guy. I just, as a writer who spent decades writing, I would hate for somebody to say
You're
that was
just you're
a
trying to
storyteller.
dethrone what a director is to me. The director is the final division of it's their storytelling that comes to life with all the pieces, where the lighting and the music and the actors and the performance and the final lines and the final edit and the final color timing and all the things that go
Well,
along
I'm
with
not
making
saying that they're not the
film.
last
It's
person that
their
put
it's
it
their
together.
their story that comes to life. So that's how I just
No,
see
it's
it.
not
Maybe
their
it's a more
story. The
poetic
story's
about
a
it.
fucking screenplay, man. It's not
Well,
their story. That's why it says screenplay by. So
well,
I
that's a screenplay.
disagree with
That's a
that. It's a
component of their
film by.
storytelling.
It's a film by. It always says film by, and that's the director. It doesn't say story by the director, film by.
It's
So
an
it is
interesting hill.
every. Okay, I don't want to take away
But
from,
Rob Reiner started
but
when
he
he was
also wrote
younger.
stuff. I mean, he wrote This Is Spinal Tap
That was good.
along with others.
I actually heard a clip on, I want to say Howard Stern. He played a clip of Reiner talking about when he was 16 years old, and his father and Mel Brooks were performing on like Ed Sullivan. At 16 years of age, he was writing jokes. And in the 6 minutes before they're going on stage, he was able to rush up to his dad and he pitches them. And Stern goes, "You're pitching them the story." He's pitching them the joke, pitches them the
Yep.
joke. And they
They
actually
took
used
him
the joke.
serious.
Yeah, so he was young. And if he was writing at 16 years of age and they were going on stage to, at 6 minutes before going on stage, he was a known powerhouse at the time. Absolute genius, perhaps even prodigy. I'm sure those guys thought. I can only imagine how Mel is feeling now because Mel is still in the world, and Mel lost his friend in Carl.
Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks. When both spouses died, and it was the men, they used to sit. They used to go over to Carl's house, and every day, and they would have dinner together and watch TV together. And when Carl died, Mel continued to go to that house for a year. Rob Reiner said, to sit in the same chair and watch TV and have dinner. He would go just even without his friend being there. And Rob
Yeah,
said
no,
he went
they
there
were
for
they're
a year.
close.
They
They were
had a
close
friendship
together.
that was unbelievable. They just had this amazing friendship. What has Rob Reiner done in his life that has inspired you the most?
Well, I
What
tell you, that
personal
Ghost of
work?
Mississippi's always stayed with me. That scene with Medgar Evers being exhumed and his body not decaying and still being warm, like he was still burning with a passion for having been, unrighteously snuffed out of life by an assassin's bullet. There was some power in that just delivers to me. That's one of those things. And Alec Baldwin's character fighting back for that, and Whoopi Goldberg delivering that's kind of rung my that that delivered more so than pretty much anything else. I mean, he's a great storyteller and the comedy is good, but that's the one that does it. How about
Okay.
you? What would you
Well,
say?
I would have to say, his body of work, especially his earlier directing stuff, certainly his character of Mike Stivic, and all in the, you know, all of this stuff inspired me to write better. All of it did. And some of his movies, The Sure
I
Thing
mean,
was,
one
we
of the
loved The Sure Thing. It was with John Cusack and Daphne Zuniga and Nicolette Sheridan.
I'm mixing it up. Stand by Me and The Sure Thing are the two films he did. The Sure Thing he did before Stand by Me.
That he acquired the rights to Stand By Me when he was Mike Stivic, because he talked about that.
He liked
So,
Stephen King stuff back then.
well, he liked that story. That story resonated with him. Billy, you know that Billy Crystal walked over to his house with Larry David. You know that, right? The night that they saw their body, unfortunately, because they kind of left the bodies there for a bit to complete the investigation.
That's the
So
thing that gets me really broken up is the idea that their daughter walked in on
yes,
it, and I couldn't possibly imagine what she's going through right now,
yeah.
and
What do you think about the fact that he was taken out? I mean, there was a fight at Conan O'Brien's, they said, and actually they said that Rob and his wife left, and it was unclear if the son left, and then at 3:30 the next day, excuse me, Romy goes and checks on her parents because she can't get an answer, and finds them and knows right away that it's probably her brother.
there's every bit of conspiracy about it, and people have fallen into the trap of he was somehow activated online or some other concept that people want to.
I didn't hear anything like that.
Oh yeah, that you can just even have to scratch the surface to hear any of that. That so the thing to consider is that there was as an someone who was dealing with addiction and had mental illness, probably as a result, traumatic brain injury as a result of either being malnourished through homelessness or some other impact that related to his addiction and his use of drugs that may have led to some delusory state, some kind of psychotic state that he, acted out on. And maybe, the sweet, good hearted people that they were, they couldn't conceive of violence against because, how do you take them both down like that? So, yeah, we don't know the details. So, and again, this is all an alleged thing. It must sit with such level of shock again, still that people are trying to process what the details are. And if they do lean into some direction that is dark and nefarious, then it's like one of those triggers that will remain in history because they were powerful and profound and creative and well loved people. He was known to be a very sweet and down to earth man who was generous and gave of himself and his time to others. And that's what other people are saying. I mean, that's all you keep hearing. Howard Stern talked about it on that one clip I was telling you about, and others I had seen talked about it as well. And
He was still actively acting in things like well, he acted in the Spinal Tap. He acted in that show
yeah, uh,
that's on Apple TV, The Bear, with Jeremy Allen White. He was in there. He was in that show 4 episodes.
yeah, someone we know and love who says hello, by the way. Really enjoyed that show and had mentioned that. So yeah, I never got into the bear yet anyway. But
Yeah, I've watched some of it too, but I've never seen him in it. I haven't been in the latest episodes, and he apparently was in 2025. He was in 4 episodes of that.
yeah, and I did see the Spinal Tap part two there, where and it ends with him, in fact. But it was also on point. Some of it was very funny. They were still very sharp. They're very crisp in their thinking. They're old guys, and they
Yeah, I
make
get
a
it. He
great
was
job of doing
78.
that.
He was 78 years old. He was.
Yeah, with Christopher Guest and Michael McKean and getting the camera on their faces, Harry Shearer too. They really played their age factor well for old rockers.
Right.
Yeah.
So he
And
was writing something. He was writing a screenplay. It was in development, and it was called Airtight. He helped write a lot of the primetime Emmys and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like the award shows, because he's a joke master. He wrote like the Friars Club roasts and stuff. 24th annual People's Choice. This was after he directed some great things too. So he still loved comedy. He still loved to write, which is awesome because he really did touch the lives of so many people in his work. and he
Did you
definitely
get a
had it.
synopsis on what's the upcoming piece? Airtight. What was the synopsis on that? Was there any listed?
Oh, there's another upcoming where he was directing in 2026. It's completed. Spinal Tap at Stonehenge, the final finale. Rock legend Spinal Tap perform an ancient Stonehenge, merging musical and historical grandeur an amplified finale in an amplified finale that perfectly unites the mystique of both the band and the prehistoric monument. That's sounds funny. That should be coming out, and I mean, that they say it's completed. Um, yeah, and so it goes. That was a great movie. I don't think he wrote that though, but I think he directed. Yeah, the writer was Mark Andrus. He's a good writer. Um,
Well, I think also from the very first Spinal Tap, because the one song Stonehenge has the great lyrics that no one
yep.
knows who they
Hmm.
were
Yep.
or what
Yep.
they were doing. Apparently, someone actually either wrote that or carved that on one of the Stonehenge blocks as a
When you
result.
look at all these movies like The Bucket List, Rumor Has It, The Story of Us, Ghost of Mississippi, there you go. The American President, that was a great movie with Michael Douglas and Michael J. Fox.
And he directed
And
that.
yeah, he directed that. And who else? The guy from Seinfeld, right? North, A Few Good Men, Misery was a great movie.
Yeah,
Sure Thing.
James Caan. Catherine Bates, I think she won the Oscar for that.
So this is Spinal Tap was even directed before The Sure Thing. You know what I'm saying? So he directed the first thing he ever directed was in 1981. Well, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
1974 called Sunny Boy. He wrote an episode of Happy Days
the
and
Joey Bishop show. Apparently, he did some writing for that. Steve Allen,
yep,
this
yep. Glenn Campbell, that was in 69.
the Glenn Campbell Good Time Hour.
Steve Allen, 67 was his first credit.
Smothers Brothers as well.
Yep.
25 episodes, 26 episodes between
Yeah.
68 and 69. He
I
wrote on
think
the.
he definitely added to as a director and probably threw some lines in there that would work. You know what I'm saying? There's no doubt in my mind that he did that. I just have a problem with him getting full credit as a director or any director getting full credit for the storytelling when a script is involved that somebody worked hard and wrote.
Well, think of it as poetic license to declare the director as the storyteller of
You can. I'm
their
not. You
vision,
can.
that comes to life with all the components of screenplay and lighting and music and all the elements and timing and editing.
They bring it to life for film. I'll give you that.
Yeah,
Um,
for that's what I'm saying. As a movie director, is the storyteller. Is that's just the way I've always kind of referred to it in
okay.
my brain.
I don't agree with the
I
storytelling
tend to
thing again.
talk to myself more
We're
than
gonna keep arguing
argue with
about
you.
that bit, but
Yeah,
okay.
no. Well, no, you keep coming around to it. I hear you. It's my own personal declaration. It's you can certainly inquire with others how they feel about it. It's
No, I don't have to.
yeah.
That's okay. They can feel any which way. I
When
would.
I think of like a Hitchcock movie, Hitchcock was the storyteller. It was his production. It was his delivery. It was his vision.
He might have nothing without a screenplay,
His
though.
storytelling. The fact of this passing, it could only we're doing our best to not get emotional about it or in any way, shape, or form identify with this loss. But
I
that
got very emotional about this loss. I
I did when
mean,
I first heard about it as well. It took me unawares. When I was
not only does his not being here affect the entertainment industry, but it also does affect um the voices that he stood for and his beliefs politically, so he was an
he was
activist.
definitely gone before
He
his
was
time.
well
There were things that were going to come out from his genius without a doubt. I mean, how do you replace that? There's
the creativity and what the world will miss out on because of him not being here anymore and the way he was taken out. because in my head, I see Rob Reiner in, how he was very, and I don't say this for, he was a Jewish man. So, he spoke like a Jewish man. He came from New York City. Then they moved, I heard, to
Yeah,
Rochester
he's a
for a bit.
mensch.
And, but I could hear him, if he was even alive, or I mean, if he was awake before the devastation happened, can hear him arguing with his son in my head, and his son grabbing that weapon and him saying, "What are you gonna do? Stab me now?" And I just
Allegedly, you could be
no,
hearing
no.
that.
Well, I mean, from my understanding now, I believe that maybe, hopefully, in their sleep. I mean, I hope that nobody witnessed this. I hope that nobody's last vision was of the unaliving of their spouse. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping.
I just and to mourn for his mother, the and what sequence it happened, or how it happened, or time of death, or anything is yet to be released, so it's tough to speculate. But the feeling that, and she was apparently a brilliant photographer in her own right. I can't say that I know any of her work, but apparently, there's a well respected uh, body of work for her effort in life that is going to be hopefully equally celebrated and commemorated alongside of her husband. People are cold and callous in this country right now. They're dealing with a lot of things, and to imagine that one of your own children might cause this level of harm, and perhaps even torture to one of their parents as a result of the damage they did to the previous parent, there is a darkness there to process. And if you don't talk about it, that's what kind of might lead to further mental health issues. With certainly
Well, I
not
hope he
grieving.
gets all the help he needs wherever he's going.
And I hope the family does get their grieving and their mourning, that they're able to breathe through, and finally see a light at the end of the tunnel and live the life that their parents would have wanted them to live. Um, that there would be hope of their memory and their love being a light for them to heal themselves, and to further do no harm to others, because first do no harm is not something for doctors alone. It's something for everybody to practice. A lot of times during the holidays, people are depressed. It's the
I
time of year that
understand
they
that.
balance between two extremes.
I get that. I'm not too sure that that was the reason that this happened. It seems like his son was struggling for a very long time.
It does
And
compound it, though, coming into this.
if that was part of it, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
if that was part of it, that might have been the furthest thing from his mind. We again, yeah, we don't know. He could have had a psychotic episode that has nothing to do with the holidays, because he supposedly was on medication, but when he would start feeling good, he would get off of his medication.
and there
So,
was some argument at the party that they were all at Conan
yep,
O'Brien's on I guess,
yep. But
apparently
before they
Saturday.
even got to the party, from my understanding, before they even got to the party, it's a dress party. You were supposed to dress up for it, and he came with a hoodie and stuff. He came dressed real casual. So there was a problem, I think, before he even ended at the party.
What do
Who
they
knows?
come dressed as, do you know?
Well, they were dressed appropriately, from my understanding. So it was more of a dressier occasion, you know, probably not a hoodie.
But the
And
detail of that will come out. It's wonderful and amazing that it hasn't yet, that I have not heard it. I don't know if you've heard it. I'm sure once it comes out, people will be talking about it. But even TMZ hasn't found a way to release or speculate on what the source of the argument was at that party, and that there's been respect
oh, it will come
for
up.
the
No,
element of
I'm
the family.
guaranteed.
I think of that as respect.
Well, here,
Personally.
no. Here's the thing. It's going to come up, and it has to. It has to, if he's going to have any kind. It's going to be part of what happened up into, so it's going to be part of the crime, I believe. And if he goes to trial, I think that there's going to be witnesses to what happened the for the last time that they saw them together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Now, if that happens, I mean,
Well, that's
conceivably,
listen, when Romy went over to the house, when Romy went over to her parents' home, because she lived across the street from my understanding. When she went over there, she found them. She called two places. She called 911 and then she called Billy Crystal. So I bet you Billy Crystal ended up at the same Conan O'Brien party. So how do we even know that there was a fight to begin with? How do they even know to go to the Sun? You know what I'm saying? So I think that's going to be I don't think that they're trying to gossip about stuff, but I guarantee you whatever they were fighting about is going to come out because it's part of what happened. And that's what they're saying.
yeah,
Whatever
and apparently
happened,
he was found so far away from where either he lived and or where his parents lived and or where the party was. So he was found in another area apparently. I don't remember the
it doesn't
exact
matter.
spot.
He was it so just because they found the bodies at 3:30, we don't know the time of death, right? So it could
Yeah,
have
yeah.
been that. Well, let me finish. They could have come home from the part. They came home before he came home. Um, because they left him there. The fight happened, the argument happened, they left, and he was still there. They don't know how long he stayed or whatever. So we don't know if he unalived them if it was in their sleep. It could have been 1 o'clock in the morning. They're they're found 13 hours later. He could have been anywhere.
So they left him at the party, and you heard that?
They didn't just so they walked over. Everybody lives close by, right? They got into the argument, or the argument might have began walking or coming over. But when the argument excelled in that, I guess they couldn't get the son to, stop. Instead of causing problems for their friends, they left the party. They left. The husband and wife, Rob Reiner and his wife, left the party. And
Michelle.
yeah, Michelle Singer, Reiner, who actually has a child of her own. Like there was four in the blended family, but
Mhm.
she had a son. She has a son, I believe, or a daughter. She has a daughter, I think. There's two boys and two girls.
I can only imagine the horror those kids are going through. It's the pain of
And the
it.
$4 million bail surprised me at first because I was like, what, how is he getting bail? He shouldn't get bail because I would think it would be easy for him to get $4 million. You know what I'm saying? It might not be from his family, but he knows people. You know what I'm saying? Imagine who he grew up with.
I don't know
So
if
I'm
anybody's
glad they
going to bail
rescinded.
you out. I mean, he's being accused of a very serious crime. I
They
don't know if
rescinded
people are.
it. They rescinded it.
Yeah, well, that makes sense because, I mean, but California tends to favor it seems like balancing the field between prosecutor and defendant. This is incredibly painful, and it's tough to think of.
I don't know that this was premeditated, that there was any real thought behind it. Again, he's somebody that struggles with mental health. I'm not sticking up for anything that happened here, obviously, most horrific. He should have stayed on his medication. I don't know if he had a psychotic break. I don't know if it was, again, premeditated or if it was
It could be
insanity.
something small, just like you said. He shows up at the party. He's not dressed. He's admitted to not taking his meds. They argue they can't stay there because they feel that now it's too much for the guests. Then they hope that he would follow and leave, but he doesn't. He sticks around, and eventually, he finds his way out. Perhaps in a quiet way, and it wasn't a big thing. Maybe he wasn't. It felt insulted or whatever, but it bit in him and stewed in him, and it created an environment that created a psychotic break. Who knows? It could be very small. It's it doesn't
Well,
take.
we don't know. I guess I think that we will find out. That's the point that I'm saying. You said we might not find out what the argument was about, but I think we will
Well, the
find.
state, it may not go to court. It may not be the kind of thing. It may be the kind of
I
thing
think
that
we'll
gets
find
television.
out.
It may be
I
the
would
kind of
be
thing
willing to bet that.
and the kind of thing that we will only get what the state records. That will be what will be made public for us. There are things that there may be details that we won't necessarily
Well,
get.
I'm sure that that's not the same thing as saying what the argument was about. I guarantee you will know what the argument was about because there were too many people at that party that had already spoken about the kid coming before knowing that there was an unaliving of the parents. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guarantee you, if there was a fucking argument at that party, somebody
The
before
detail that
somebody,
he was dressed that you've already pointed out.
I
That's
didn't say that that was what the argument was. I
I know
said
that,
that,
I understand that, but that's a detail that's come out with
right,
that's a source from the party conceivably that
right.
that would be said.
You,
So the
right.
fact that we just got one thing and not the other, I think also again is a kind of I don't know, I
Well, I
kept
think
feeling
that,
like the people were being very protective of the Reiners.
okay. Well,
They deserve that kind of respect.
I'm not disagreeing with that. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve that. And that's not what I'm saying. And that's neither here nor there. What I'm saying to you is people already came home from the party, probably already bitched about what they heard in the party. So there's family members now, and maybe even people that help around the house, like the housekeepers, nannies, whatever. And now they've all heard this before they even realize, holy shit, look at what happened. So I
People are
think,
being, no, I'm sure there's going to be somebody working that. You're right. There's going to be reporters, paparazzi, any number of.
yeah, I think we'll know what the fight was about. And that could be something silly and stupid that caused this outrage. It could have been something as simple as he could have
He
the
could shave his
kid.
head. He didn't get dressed. He was told to do the two things, and he didn't do
Well,
it.
I didn't, no. See, now I didn't say he was told to get dressed.
No, I'm just saying that's the
That's
supposition
probably what
is
happened, that
it's very simple.
probably
It could be
said to him,
small.
"Hey, listen, Conan, it's a dress party." But they, how are they going to fight with this kid? Like, so maybe I don't know. It's
He's
a horrible
32,
situation.
right? He said 32.
He's 32. Yeah, it's an absolutely horrible situation. But here's what I want to say: there is addiction and there is mental health running rampant in this country. And there is no real mental health help if you don't have money. Now, I know he came from money. He had every fucking thing. That Nick Reiner had everything except what was up in his head. And again, when you see pictures of him, he's always the one that's not smiling. He's always the one that kind of looks like he's spaced out. Whether he's on something or not, it looks like he's quite not there. And I don't mean that to come up nasty. It's constructive. And if you see pictures of him, even when he does the interview with his dad and the way he looks over at his dad, like he's just trying to figure the guy out, there's a blankness in him. The sweetest picture I saw of him was with him and his sister together, where she's holding him. And it didn't look like that was such an old picture. So I think that he was a kid that struggled. They said he's been struggling since early I want to say middle school. Um and again, there's four kids, right? And it's this one, and he struggles, and they tried tough love on him because they thought that that was the answer. And Rob Reiner had said when he was making that movie with his son, being Charlie, that's based on Nick's story, that what he realized was, Rob Reiner said, what he realized was just because there was a degree on the wall didn't mean that that person knew what to do. He said, I needed to listen to my own son. I didn't need to have strangers tell me. I don't know if he was around today or if he could come back and say, well, I don't know about that anymore. You know what I mean? Um, but here was a guy, this is the heartbreaking part of it. Here was a guy that brought so much light and so much like with the sure thing. Like I remember wanting to be loved like that, you know. You know what I'm saying? Like you aspired. I always say there's songs and there's movies that teach you the kind of love that you want to be treated with. And the sure thing was one of my favorite, is one of my favorite movies. My introduction to John Cusack, and just his devotion and dedication to the woman of his dreams, only to find out that the woman of his dreams was right there with him the whole time on the drive. And it was fun. And I remember the pace of the movie and how you wanted it to keep going. That was a movie that really stuck with me. Stand By Me, I thought was a perfect blend of comedy and drama and sadness. Another John Cusack was in that movie. He had the role of the brother that died. Remember, Will Wheaton's older brother was John Cusack.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure there's mourning from those guys too. That
absolutely, there has to be, because but he touched. That was the thing. Like he was like a Robin Williams, a huge light, but he wasn't near as in your face as Robin Williams. But he was so behind the scenes of so much that was so good. To be taken out the way he was taken out is heartbreaking.
well, Robin Williams, that was very painful too, because for about 6 months, all we sat with was the idea that he committed suicide, and then his wife wrote that letter that explained what his Lewy body syndrome was and what he was dealing with. And I felt a lot of pain at that loss too. And it's actually a little bit greater pain to some degree, because and it was a shock. So do we still have yet to find out what this is about? Who knows the kind of sympathy we might have for this kid?
Well,
There
that's
may be something that
well,
comes out that we
the
don't
best
know.
comparison, that I would say about the two would be what we didn't know what Rob Reiner was dealing with about his child, and we didn't know what his wife was dealing with about her son. You know what I'm saying? So,
This was
Rob,
their direct son. This was their
yes,
birth
this was,
child.
yes, 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 yes. The she didn't he didn't have any kids with Penny Marshall. She had one girl apparently with in a previous relationship. But they were together for over 30 years or something for sure. And she inspired the ending. Here you go, for How Harry Met Sally. So I don't think the script was written by him, but definitely he changed the ending because he met her, Michelle Singer, right? During the making of Harry Met Sally was when Rob Reiner met Michelle, and he knew right away that he was going to marry her. And it did change the ending of When Harry Met Sally. That's what was said. I don't know how the other ending was going to be.
Well, he had his mother on the set, so he
Yep.
was in.
Well, his mother was,
Yeah, she would have given him the thumbs up. The nice Menschy guy that he was, he would have included his mother in the process. I'm sure.
yeah. No, he was, he was a good guy all the way around because he stayed humble. He was very quiet while making a lot of noise, while making a big difference. Like when I started reading all of the writing he was doing, even for the award shows, even in 2000, he was already a well-known director at that point. You know what I'm saying? And so he never forgot where he came from and where his roots were, and more or less the family business and the way he carried himself, he was a mensch. He was a mensch. Take care, guys. Thank you.